here we are.
You can take a hard pass on this one if you want, but just I guess this is maybe a little more in the realm of philosophy, but I would imagine working with virtual reality, you have to find yourself thinking about it and considering with it in terms of how these tools are interacting with the human brain. My question is, what do you consider to be the mind? Like the mind's beyond the brain because my body's attached to it. Now I'm holding a pen in my hand. I'm writing things in my mind down. I can conceptualize the environment that I'm in here. That's kind of part of my mind. If I don't know something, I know I can Google it. Now that's like a tool. That's also kind of this appendage. Do you have any thoughts on like kind of how you conceptualize that? I imagine you have to think a little bit about.
Oh, we think a lot about it. Yeah.
Right?
You would think, people that know me and you know me a little bit, like I'm a fairly analytical person, right? I'm data driven, but we have to think about those things all the time. In fact, I have a great little lecture, a presentation I give, and I even do it in class sometimes to sort of mess with students a little bit. And we talk about, I'll take a little bit farther than what you're doing. We'll come back to what your point, but like, what is consciousness? And so someone's like, well, I'm human because I have a soul, or I'm conscious on this. I say, okay, well, let's consider this, because we're actually pretty close to. IBM can almost do it. So let's say I have a supercomputer and I have an interface, and just for hypothetical purposes, we'll say you have a nice floating head. Everybody likes a nice floating head on your screen, so it looks humanoid kind of thing. But in reality, it's a computer behind the scenes, and you're asking it questions, and it's giving you completely reasonable answers. So you're having a conversation with your computer, but what's really going on behind the scenes is just a brute force method. When you ask a question, it's fast enough that it can run through, let's say, trillions of possibilities in real time, and it pops off a response to you, and it keeps doing it over and over and over again. So there's no brain behind it. There's no artificial intelligence or anything. It's not reasoning. It's just literally brute forcing your input and giving you an appropriate response. But to you, you're having a conversation with it. So what I ask my students is, is it conscious? How do you know the difference? If I can fake it, isn't that the same thing? How do you know? How do you know when you're actually talking to somebody that they're tuned in and focused on what you're saying, or they're just kind of giving you a response? Sometimes we pick up on those little cues. You're on the phone with somebody, you're asking them questions, and all of a sudden the responses become a little bit more spaced out. They're kind of like, yeah, yeah, and you're like, oh, they're doing something. I can tell. But sometimes you can't. So,
you know who's good at that? Every girlfriend that I've ever had has a very good ability to know exactly when I stopped listening.
So it is really interesting to think about what does that mean, because then when we're designing these environments, being able to utilize that to some degree is helpful. If you can, so one thing we've learned, and I think we talked about this in our previous podcast, but primarily virtual reality is visual right now. I mean, it's like 95% visual. You can do some sounds, we can do some spatial sounds. We really can't do touch. There are companies that pipe in smells. You can do a little bit of that, not to the degree that we do in the real world, but we can do a little bit with smell. We can't really do much with touch. And your other senses, it's just limited. So visual is the primary channel we're giving you. Eventually, that's not going to be the case. We're going to find other ways. It'll probably be long after we're gone, but it'll happen. And as you're building these things, what we know now, though, is even if I just add in a little bit of audio, I can degrade the visual realism significantly. But people come out of the simulation going, "Oh my God, that felt so real." And I can have ones that visually look photorealistic, like just like the real world. I put you in there, no sound, no touch maybe at all. There's a little bit of haptic stuff we can do. It's pretty limited, but none of that. And then I put people in almost a cartoony looking world, but I've added some audio into it. Maybe there's a little bit of touch into it. And they come out thinking it's just as, quote, immersive as the visual one. So it's the kind of thing where, and what's triggering that? Well, it's the brain. It's those different senses, those different modalities that we're used to every single day. So how can I play on that? Well, as an example, if I really want to get VR very widely spread, like you said, everybody's got a phone. Not everybody can have a high-end head-mounted display. They're not going to own a C6. That's a multi-million-dollar device. But if I have a phone and I can somehow, I don't know how yet, do more than one sense, more than just visual, someday we'll probably be able to, does that really give a huge level of immersion to a person? They're in their own memories, or this simulation is triggering a memory, and they're forgetting that it's technology, and they're just using it for a design task or an art task or just, nostalgia, whatever the case may be. Everybody's got that device, and instantly it could be spread to everybody. So we think about that a lot, where to lower that computational power, so I could do it on a phone, I could instantly reach millions of people. But because I can't run the highest fidelity, because a phone is not as powerful as a big desktop computer or a big supercomputer. So there's times where those kind of trade-offs are able to be made because of what you're talking about. What's consciousness? What can the brain? How can I sort of get someone more into the simulation by using these little techniques? And then that has a real tangible effect onto the computing platform we can actually deploy it on. And so it really, really is kind of I love that. I think it's so neat because you have these things like you're talking about. What are feelings? What are emotions? What is this? What is that? But then, like I said, it can have this real direct effect to, mathematical properties that we're working with every single day in computer graphics. So it's really interesting. I'm not a psychologist. I work with a lot of them very routinely. You can extend this out to even just the psychology of interfaces. How we respond to different colors, to different fonts, to different, dark themes came out in desktops and mobile the last couple of years, really popular. Everybody's going to dark theme. Why? Is it because it's new, or do people really like it? Or does the human brain really react better if I have lighter text and a dark background? I don't know. I really don't know. But there is a surge in popularity, and it's something we need to, we look at. So there's so many cool aspects to this. He says, and I love just kind of talking about it and seeing where it can go into play. I'm not an expert. I don't research that directly, but I do use it in my research when we can. Absolutely.